Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining this learning experience brought to you by Snyk. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. Before we dive into today's session, I have just a couple of notes to cover with you. First, we are recording this session today, so if you miss any of our conversation, if you'd like to watch again later, or if you'd like to share this with the rest of your team, we'll be sure to send you an email with a link to access the recording on demand. We'll send that to you shortly after we conclude this live session today. Now, if you'd like to get involved, there are a couple of ways to do so. Your first option is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you find that chat tab, I'd like you to let us know from where in the world you're joining from today. Now, if you have any specific questions, we do want you to send those into the Q&A tab, also on that right side of your screen. We've got some time set aside for questions at the end, and so please do send those in and we'll do our best to address them. Finally, we will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So ways to be eligible for this giveaway are to send in your chats, send in questions, and to fill out our survey, both in the handouts, and I will post it in the chat at the top of the hour as well. So our topic today is building better AppSec programs with ASPM. I'm joined today by Vandana Verma Segal, staff developer advocate at Snyk. And then joining us, he's on screen now, but joining us toward the end of our session with a demo, we're joined by Dylan Havelock, senior solutions engineer at Snyk. So Vandana and Dylan, thank you both so much for joining us today. Vandana, I'll turn it on over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here and interacting with a wonderful audience about the interesting topic which is hot in the market right now about ASPM. So, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today we're going to be talking about building better application security program with ASPM. We will be talking about in detail what is ASPM. But to start off is application security posture management. Now, before we dive into the presentation, let's talk a little bit about myself. I am a staff security advocate at Snyk, taking care of the workshops and a bunch of other things. I love DevSecOps, open source, and cloud security. I've been involved in a lot of projects when it comes to open source, and I'm heavily involved in OWASP, which is Open Worldwide Application Security Project. It's one of the biggest application security community around the world. I've been involved in a bunch of other things as well. So that's a little bit about myself. Let's start with a presentation. Now, when we talk about the dynamic world of application security, where we continuously face new challenges and complexity with cyber threats becoming more sophisticated, they are targeting vulnerabilities in application like never before. As our systems become more interconnected, the vulnerabilities in applications are even more becoming bigger, especially with the widespread adoption of cloud. The potential attack surface also expand, and this will increase the risk as well as this means the organizations or for organizations the need to stay up on top of latest threats effectively is so much needed. Whatever we do, we need to make sure that we know what's happening. Now, in today's digital age, businesses heavily depend on different kind of software solutions. That's why it's crucial to recognize the critical connection between the solid application security practices and successful software development, because after all of this synergy that paves the way for sustainable innovation, we need the ever growing software, because we want new applications and different kind of applications. That's what we need, and all handy as early as possible. So we need to understand the threat landscape as well, because if we don't understand the threat landscape, we are in a big trouble. So today's agenda is jam packed. We're going to be talking about modern application security landscape, and we will also be talking about the challenges that you might be facing in your day-to-day job or within your application security program. Then we will move on to the 5 strategic security checkpoints to see before implementing ASPM and what ASPM is all about. We're going to define ASPM, and we're going to also look at why is it called the workbench for application security apartments. Now, we'll then look at how to scale and manage, and a few challenges when you're using or when you are performing application security posture management, so that you have a bigger and a better idea about it, how to look at and what perspective can help you grow your organization and understand that this is your threat landscape. At the same time, how we can overcome the issues that are there. So we're going to finish it with the different use cases and examples of organizations, and not just one set of organization, but different sets of organizations, how they can leverage application security posture management that might have large portfolio of softwares and services. And at the same time, how ASPM can actually solve some of the challenges and problems that are arising from different things. Now, let's understand the modern application landscape. And when we talk about that, there are certain challenges that we have. So let's first define the concept of the shift left. I'm sure that we all have been understanding that shift left is very, very important, and it is something which has been there for a long time. So let's understand that what it is: integrating security practices earlier into the software development life cycle. In very simple words, so traditionally security means measures or things were typically added later in the development process as a separate phase. Even, let me tell you, when we started off with application security, we were sitting in a completely separate room, and it was an afterthought. But then slowly and steadily things started to change. Now, when we talk about application security, it's becoming more integrated. So, where the traditional application where it used to get developed and then the security used to come, now security is coming into the earlier stages of development, such as during the design phase, even, or even the coding phase. We are talking about it. Of course, we have most companies, more and more custom development work happening, and is really of the strategic application work which is happening these days. The way we engage with our customers is different, the way we sell things, and that is really more and more through customs app which is happening. And so there are more and more developers driving these things, moving faster and faster. We've seen over the last several years that DevOps and cloud come very long way, and has enhanced how fast teams can work and the different cycles. Earlier, the development cycle was yearly or 6 months. Now, while we talk about the development cycle, there are releases which are happening in a month. There are releases which are happening in weeks, or even for that matter, I know some companies who have multiple releases in a day. So that has changed. A developer is working on the right things if developer only have few minutes of in a day to spend on security, but are they spending it on the right security things or not? And if it does, if they're fixing a bunch of things, does that actually make a dent in the risk profile? So again, another question comes is that a lot of people are still trying to figure that out, and you can't really get there if you don't understand whether you got everything covered, because the threat landscape has become so bigger or wide now. You also want to make sure that the security coverage is everywhere. And yes, especially in the world of DevOps, where teams are distributed, sitting everywhere. Like, I'm sitting in one part of the world, my friend Dylan is sitting in Canada. So we are all at different parts and we are working on the similar things. So we're kind of doing our own thing, but we're creating which is meaningful for the organization. Now, when we talk about developers, they may be creating a new repo, they may create a new pipeline, or they may have visibility into all of that at the same time. So making sure that we have the right set of tools, right set of security, and we have a good picture of risk profile. Because if you don't see it, we would never be able to resolve what is there. So the shift to left methodology has significantly changed the landscape of application security by moving security practices earlier in the development life cycle. But with the transformation of application security teams, there are unique set of challenges. And there are the three challenges which you can see. Let's start with the siloed challenges and risk prioritization. So with the adoption of various security tools throughout the development life cycle, there is a fragmental data, like the data is fragmented, and the siloed security issues in the application security is there for sure. Now the difficult task is that what are the genuine risks which are there among numerous vulnerabilities, and this fragmented approach makes it tough to actually prioritize effectively, especially with the security teams, with questions like where does the actual risk is, what should we prioritize, or what can we safely overlook, which is with risk acceptance as well. Because I've seen there are critical bugs in the production, and people have accepted the risk, and then suddenly a breach happens, which should never happen. So we can't just keep overlooking the things as well. Then there are other challenges which are about ensuring complete coverage. So the proliferation of all these tools also bring the challenges of ensuring comprehensive coverage. So application security teams will find themselves questioning, especially about the blind spots which are there, the tools in use, and precisely what is being secured. The absence of unified view of an entire application security or landscape creates uncertainty. For example, the question would be, where are the gaps? What tools are we going to use? So again, the same questions in loop you'll have, or what exactly we are securing. I'll give you an example, especially around this. We have crown jewels. Sometimes they're not secured, and at the same time, the data which is not supposed to be secure is all encrypted. So we have to have that right kind of segregation. This is to ensure that we have the complete coverage, and at the same time is becoming it's not becoming a pressing concern for the organization. Last challenge that we are facing is about clear guardrails, or the clarity in the guardrails. So while advocating for pushing security earlier into the development life cycle, the shift left approach often lacks the clear guardrails. And application security teams generally struggle with frustration, wondering why specific issues need addressing and what all overall security posture would look like. So, a lack of clarity in objectives and outcomes will often raise questions, and even not just that the landscape, but for fixing the issue, what issues need to be fixed. I've given many presentations, and all presentations have this question, especially when it's around application security, that how do we prioritize. So security and development team needs to sit together and understand what needs to be prioritized. If we don't do it, we're always in trouble. Now let's understand a little bit about how we can evaluate an AppSec program, and especially around how do you do it with the right implementation. So there are 5 strategic security checkpoints. And while we dive into this, it's essential to approach this with a careful planning and assessment before jumping into the new tools, processes, or people. So we're doing it for every security tool which we are implementing, and it's important to thoroughly evaluate the application security landscape, and it includes considering factors such as inventory compliance requirements, risk profiles, vulnerabilities, and existing security controls. The first one is inventory of applications and databases, which we can't protect. So, where you are not aware of, you can't protect it. Start by creating a detailed inventory of all applications and database. This should include information like technology use, the type of data that you are managing, but also the most important side is that who owns those accounts. A lot of times we get to know, okay, this is the data, but we don't get to know who owns this so that they can fix it. So establishing this inventory will lay the groundwork or understanding your application's landscape and potentially pain point or potential security blind spots. So while we may seem straightforward about it, we may know that the organizations might struggle with visibility into the application's landscape, and particularly as they embrace new technologies and expand their digital landscape. So, very, very important. The second one is to identify the compliance requirements. And this is to determine the legal, regulatory, and contractual compliance obligations that are relevant to our applications and data. So we need to make sure that we prioritize secure applications or securing applications that would handle the sensitive data. So this could include personally identifiable information, which we call it as PII, health records, financial data, all of those sensitive data, and ensure that the compliance is not only reducing legal risk but also building trust and with the stakeholders and with the customers at the same time. Very, very important. The third one is to assess the risk profiles. Now, so this is to classify your applications and databases into different risk ties based on the factors like data sensitivity and business criticality. So the applications with high, especially with high risks, we need to concentrate on that, but the profile that we need to understand, so that it has robust security measures and closer scrutiny and tailoring those security efforts according to those risk profiles. Very, very important. The fourth point is analyzing current vulnerabilities. So how can that happen? This is by conducting through assessments to identify any existing vulnerabilities that are there. You can use techniques such as application security pen testing, static or dynamic analysis, database vulnerability assessments, which can be there, or we can prioritize the remediation efforts based on the severity and potential impact of identified weaknesses which are there. The last one being existing security controls that needs to be assessed properly. Sometimes those controls become redundant, but we still just keep on going with them. So we need to assess the effectiveness of the current security controls, whether it's about reviewing the tools which are related to static application security testing, which is SAST, dynamic application security test, or maybe web application firewalls. So there are a lot of acronyms and jargons that we do like in security, but identifying any gaps in in coverage or opportunities, I think it's very important. Now, what else is important is application health data. Now, we're going to look at AppSec health check and make sure that we could potentially map out our current security position. So, before diving into the implementation of ASPM, we're going to define ASPM. So don't worry, we are going to do it. It's important to conduct a thorough assessment of your existing security processes. And we have seen this in the previous slide as well, that we need to go granular level, like bit by bit. This might take some time. That's a 1 or 2 time job. But then, trust me, if it's done, it's going to help in a longer run as well. So it involves getting insights into current practices, also identifying both the strengths and weaknesses, and assessing how the platform can fit into the organization broader security objectives. So it's essential to involve your security team and the relevant stakeholders in this analysis to ensure that you have a comprehensive understanding. And this assessment which we are doing will actually help pinpoint areas where ASPM can complement existing security measures that you have placed in the organization. So you need to ensure that the implementation of ASPM is in line with the organization goals and objectives. This is really important to clearly define how the platform will contribute to your overarching security strategies and specifying the desired outcome. So you can establish a roadmap to help you on that journey which is there. And ASPM can or will align with your organization security objectives if it's purpose driven. Very important. So it's always important to explain the why are you implementing this tool within your organization or application security program. And this will also contribute to the overall security of your program which is there, and building trust with the stakeholders. We need to foster an open dialogue to address if there are any concerns, or if you want to gather inputs. Make sure to organize cross functional workshops, meetings, training sessions to facilitate the team communication, as well as it's important to establish those channels for ongoing communication to address any questions and to ensure that there's a collective understanding of ASPM roles in the application security program. Make sure to develop comprehensive training program. Without the training program, generally things don't work out. So we have seen it. This is really important to explain why are you actually implementing the tool, and how do you do that? Why is it important? What will you leverage out of it? What are the features of ASPM you're going to be leveraging? So it's good to have the comprehensive training around it. And not just that, but empowering the users to leverage ASPM to enhance the security of their applications by the tailor training. Like, it has to be customized training and hands-on training, very important. Then the usual, which we are implementing security teams, is for regular audits, assessment to identify and even rectify if there are any gaps in the ASPM implementation. So having continuous monitoring to ensure the ASPM remains effective in addressing evolving threats, that we can actually have it by scheduled regular audits, assessments of the ASPM tools. And not just that, we can actually show something in the end as well, so that you have a better understanding of ASPM tooling as well. So finally, the most important one is, if you want to have a good implementation approach, this will help in actually getting the right kind of teams. So it's always good to target teams which might potentially already have security champions or part of security guild, because they generally tend to adopt earlier, and they're already interested in security for sure. So they might be more need to have new set of tool, or a tool which can give you good kind of feedback. So make necessary adjustments wherever needed. Now, we'll be talking about the AppSec workbench as well. So now we have defined a few application security challenges. We've also seen the 5 security checkpoints before the implementation of ASPM. Now we're going to see what is ASPM. Let's define that. ASPM stands for Application Security Posture Management. And this is an application security approach that leverages holistic visibility into the application security environment, automation, and comprehensive security measures to implement security measures. Improving It will also help in improving the overall application security program as well. Now, this introduces the concept of set first approach, and that allows organizations to prioritize their most critical assets. So that could be your repositories, the teams, the endpoints, web servers, or it could be anything. So we need to understand that, and this could be based on the business importance regardless of the security tooling data that we are using. It also enables security application security teams to allocate limited resources effectively and focus on the vulnerabilities that have the significant business impact, rather than getting overwhelmed with the whole lot of backlogs. And it will help developers as well. So ASPM typically involves collaboration between development, operations, and security teams. And if this might be familiar, that you're right, you guessed it, it's all about DevSecOps methodology. And now, to have that collaboration and communication, we will be coming to that point for sure, because we have some key pointers to talk about, and we will discuss it. But before that, let's understand the AppSec or ASPM key pillars. And here's what you can see, that there are 5 pillars or principles that we have mentioned, which is around visibility and coverage. This is to better gain a complete understanding of assets and control in your application security environment, from source code to the cloud. Controlling the next 0 day, and this is more important around the incident response and the playbooks which are there. And you might have 0 day hits, but then how to identify and understand the application that might deserve a complete response. Third one is risk-based prioritizing. This is to focus on the efforts based on the risks, or greater risk to the business. Then, how do you measure success or of that plan, whether it's working or not, whether the teams are adopting it or not? The last one is one of my favorite ones, because it's around people and culture. If we don't have the right set of people, we would never be able to successfully implement ASPM and their interest in the application security program. So the good one would have only when we have the right kind of set of people. But then at the same time right kind of culture within the organization, which brings the trust. I've seen the application security challenges, but um, this will become more seamless if we have the right culture. So culture plays a very big role. And when we're talking about ASPM, it is emerging as a crucial cybersecurity framework which is aimed at continuously evaluating and supporting the security posture of application throughout the entire life cycle. It serves as an important tool in addressing the silos which are there, the covering the gaps and the frustration that you encounter with the shift left approach. Whether we accept it or not, those issues are there. Now, while we talk about all of that, we with based on these pillars, it is very important that we have the unified visibility of ASPM, where we have a central hub which gives us unified information, and at the same time it provides the right clarity. Then we need to have complete comprehensive coverage within the application security posture management, which can tell us these are the gaps, these are the improvements needed, these are the defenses which we can apply. The third one, what we need is strategic decision making. And we can see it here with this slide that risk based prioritization helps the organization to measure the success. And ASPM empowers application security team to make those strategic decisions because it's providing insight into the real risks and the platform, which is enabling the optimal prioritization. So all of this is helping creating the clear security guardrails, which are very, very important. What we need is automation. Let me tell you, with ASPM, automation is the key, and automation is your best friend, because this helps you measure a lot of things, and it's a very strong idea, connecting connecting the different dots. So let's see how automation plays an important role in enabling the monitoring and assessment of application security throughout all the stages of software development. So if we are talking in the context of application security posture management automation, it's deeply implemented. This is leveraging various scanning tools that you might be having within your pipeline, and we're talking about security tools in a sense to and utilize to increase capabilities and support the strong application security program. uh, Now let me actually define one by one. First one, to start off with, real time scanning and early detection. So how can that happen? Through automated code scans configured with the configured with the different tools that you might have. So let's say if you have a static application security testing, or what we call it as SAS tool, this is to scan your first party code, which you actually write within your organization, or for that matter, talking about open source with software composition analysis, what we call it as SCA. So this is through the manifest files or the dependencies which are there, which in the ecosystem, and different programming languages that you might be using. So we have a continuous analysis of that source code, the dependencies and the configurations, and these integrations will provide the comprehensive coverage with all the repositories and pipelines. This will be running the scans in the background during development, and this will enable instant feedback as well if we have the real time scanning. So we have to understand how early we need to detect and remediate. If you detect a vulnerability and you don't remediate, it's as good as not knowing about it. So continuous automated scanning decreases the need for those periodic audits that are there, as well as this is to ensure complete coverage. That is the first point. Now, um, we also have proactive policy enforcement, and this is more around integrating with the configuration enforcement tools which are there, and that will automate the application security policies and configuration consistently across all the organized environments that we have. Then we have swift response and remediation. Now, the alert tools are alerting, they are involved, they are integrating with the ASPM automation. They are telling us, but then if you are not having the right messaging apps, or could be Slack, or could be Teams, or could be any other communication mechanism, if we don't get the alert at the right time, we're in a big trouble. That's why we need the orchestration capabilities of Slack or Teams, or maybe a response via email, that yes, there is a vulnerability, there is an alert, we need to fix it. Or we can integrate it into our ticketing systems as well, like Jira. Developers are using it widely, so this will streamline the remediation process, the workflows, and what not around it. Then we need adaptability to change. Now this is very important, because in the past few months or an year, we've been talking about the AI usage of AI powered tools. So with which is developing the code in a very short amount of time. Tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and many others, which are automating the scanning as well. And this is facilitated by the tool integration, which you also need to adjust assessments just to keep with the pace and the changes in the code and configuration, and with the amount and the volume of code that is coming up. So if you're using AI powered tools, so integrating these tools with the CI/CD pipeline system allows scans to run on every commit and pipeline execution, and you can have this at different stages, that you have it through the IDE. So you can have it when you push the code, raise a pull request, or you might have to check at the end of your pull request. Let's say you're using GitHub, you might have one additional step to give you that visibility, or depending on what you're actually put those endpoints are. Now, I've been using IDE with GitHub Copilot, and it's suggesting me good amount of code. I just need to say that this is something which I want, and then it provides me good suggestion of code. But then it's on me whether it's a safe code or not. So, lastly, DevSecOps, because we're talking about um, development, security, and operations. So, deep integration with continuous life cycle deliveries or CI/CD processes. We talk about embedding the development life cycles and monitoring the production environment, wherein we have to foster the responsibility between security and development teams, which is very important. So, automation and integration between ASPM and the different security tools is very important to strengthen the application security program, or even for that matter, scaling. Now, how do we tackle and manage different kind of application security challenges? Let's look at the ASPM responsibility, realities, and responsibilities. So, while we get deep dive into it, application security programs will uh, encounter increasingly daunting challenges in maintaining security coverage and keeping up with the pace, because they are increasing like anything. So let's talk about what is the first challenge. The first one might be around integration challenges, but why is it so? Because right now you need to integrate ASPM into existing security protocols and workflows that you already have within your organization, and often this will always, or I would say, there will be a friction between different teams, resistance between teams, that why are we aligning ASPM with the established processes? It might require a lot of communications and collaboration, and even it might need a suggestion from the top down saying that you need to implement ASPM. So if we don't understand it, if we don't put the trust within the teams, these integration challenges will always be there. Then we need to understand the volume of vulnerabilities, and this would always come back to what I mentioned or what I talked about in the AI powered tool, is that we need to make sure the volume of code, which is now nowadays produced like anything, and the volume of vulnerabilities companies need to keep up with this is humongous. Like and risk based prioritization is another challenge. So understanding with or alignment with the existing security tools is very important, and integrating ASPM may face resistance from different teams is also an unsaid thing. But if we start talking about engagement, if we put a right framework, Trust me, this can be avoided. So how that can be done? By standardizing security practices across the diverse applications. So it's more around scaling ASPM across diverse applications with unique characteristics that would require standardizing security practices. So if your flexible security practices are there that are more adaptable to different application types, this is essential because ASPM configuration should accommodate all of those things. Now, scaling is good, but then again, training is equally important. If we need to train the right teams, we need to have the right set of people who understands it, and it has to be tailor made, as I said before, because if you don't tailor it made it for the right teams, mhm, it will not work out. I might be part of security team and I don't need the training. Development team don't understand the tool and they need the right set of hands-on training. So if you don't give them the hands-on training, it's good for nothing. So we need to have right set of visibility and the training for the team. Lastly, continuous monitoring across as SDLC. This can go back to the DevSecOps point, and this is more to scale the application security program that will necessitate continuous monitoring. So again, you might be doing this with all different tools that we have in the pipeline, um, but then periodic assessment, which is traditional, may not offer things. So you need to automate it. So beyond providing up to date information of your application security posture, we need to have the visibility of what we have. Like there are four windows in our house, and there's one window which is in the attic. We go out and we don't close that. That's a big risk for our house. So we need to understand the holistic picture, and for that we need to have the right kind of strategies, especially for the portfolio. So let's talk about some of the use cases. The first one is about adopting security tools and the diverse tech stack. So if you consider the scenario where we have an organization that manages a different set of applications, a range of applications, so each application is developed with different language or framework or an architecture. That could be this could be true if you are using for example Microsoft microservices architecture. So securing this diverse landscape will present significant challenges. Here is how ASPM can address this complexity. um, Imagine a company with varied application portfolio. So this could include application written in Java, Python, Ruby on Rails. You might also have applications which is based on iOS, so Swift or Android platform. So you need to ensure the security of all of these diverse tech stack. And this is important because you need to tackle all the challenges within the company that you have. And ASPM will provide the robust security for scanning those applications throughout the security lifecycle in one package. And you will have the visibility or coverage across the different applications, whether it's Python, Java, Ruby on Rails, or any other programming languages which is there. The second one is centralized security management and visibility. Now, this time, let's say you're overseeing a multinational corporation with diverse portfolio of web application, mobile apps, backend systems. They're scattered across different departments and regions. So it's a complex landscape to navigate the potential blind spots and gaps which are there due to decentralized security data. So we are used to that kind of environment, but there are tons of challenges around us as well. So to tackle those challenges, you decide, or the organization decide to implement ASPM, because ASPM will act as a centralized hub or a unified way to overcome those challenges. Now, while we talk about fixing those challenges, but then we need to have automated policy enforcement and compliances as well. So let's see this one with the challenge of maintaining compliance across diverse portfolios of applications, and especially if you're part of a financial organization. And let's take their example as well. So the company is operating in multiple countries. Each of us has its own stringent regulatory compliances governing data privacy, security. So application portfolio include that range of sensitive financial data, And you can imagine that this could be banking apps as well, which invest in platforms and customer relationship management and whatnot. So we need to have automated policy enforcements and compliance management tools, which will be tailored to the specific requirements of each application. So the bank, for example, the banking app should adhere to strict, let's say, regulations across various jurisdictions. So ASPM will ultimately provide those enforcement policies and whatnot. Then we would talk about deep integration with DevOps pipeline, where we talk about agile methodologies and DevSecOps pipeline, integrating those checks with each component of the pipeline. So very, very important. Lastly, continuous assessments and monitoring, where we, let's say, consider a healthcare app. And this is tasked with managing extensive patient records and highly sensitive medical information within the digital system. So given the critical nature of this data, just to ensure the security of the system is really critical to safeguard patients' privacy and adhere to the healthcare regulations. And you might imagine, so to fortify that security posture has to be strong. So ASPM would actually give you a bigger picture around it so that we can monitor if the data is being stolen or where the data is going, how the data is being managed. All right, we're almost at the end. But before that, what I really want to do is I would like to hand it over to my friend Dylan, who's going to be actually giving you a good walkthrough of the ASPM tool. Over to you, Dylan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vandana. Just about to share my screen. And we can take a look at what we have in practice today within the Snyk platform. So for some time now, we've had some of these ASPM capabilities that Vandana has been speaking to. And more recently, we were releasing even new features just last week as part of that. So we're going to take a look at what we have to offer. So right off the bat, at a bit of a high level, right, you can really what we're looking at is a breakdown of kind of asset types. So you can see that we're able to pull in, not just what we have with Snyk, but directly from our source control managers in terms of repositories. So we can see GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps in this case. And then we can also quickly see, what exactly is being covered by Snyk in terms of SAST and SCA coverage. But we can also see what those gaps are. So the places where Snyk is missing, or our AppSec tooling is missing. Double clicking into that, we can really get the detailed view of this here on the inventory view. Right, so this is that asset inventory that we, of all of our different repositories and container images as well. So we can see all of the repositories that, some are being scanned by Snyk, some scanned by other AST tools. We get the different sources for each asset here on the right. This is great. We can get good view into what repositories are currently being scanned by Snyk. But if we scroll down a little bit, we can also see stuff that is not being scanned, right? So what are our actual coverage gaps, right? What are we missing in terms of SCA or SAST scanning? And the other thing that we can do here is not just understand the coverage gaps, but we can also classify our assets as well. Right, so Vandana mentioned having those crown jewels within your organization, right? What are the repositories that are actually contributing to those business critical applications? Well, we can I assign that here by setting this class. So our class A assets, those would be our most business critical assets. But we can also set, that to A, B, C, or D, right? If you even want to deprioritize maybe some internal projects, test repos, which never really see the light of day. Right, so you can either manually set that asset classification here in the inventory view, but as Vandana mentioned as well, really policies are what is going to, automation is what we want to be striving for. Right, so if I navigate over to the policies section here within Snyk, There's a variety of different policies that we have, but there's two use cases that I'm going to highlight. Number one is automatically raising that asset class A, given a given criteria. Right, so there's a lot of metadata that we're pulling in from our Git repositories. In this case, we're pulling in different GitHub topics, and we were looking for any repositories that have been tagged with PCI. If that's the case, we want to raise that asset class to class A, since we know that those are going to be processing payments. And then every repository that is seen thereafter is automatically going to inherit that class A asset. Right. This helps us prioritize our repositories, and then again narrows the scope of what we want to concern ourselves with. And then what we can also do is do cool things like actually notify when any of our class A repositories actually have a coverage gap. Right. So again, you can apply filters. We can look at just repositories that have been tagged as class A that don't have the different Snyk coverage gaps, and then we can either create a Jira ticket, send an email, a Slack message, which can then alert us to take action and ensure that we get those critical applications being scanned by our AST tools. So hopping back to the inventory view, right? We've had these capabilities for some time within Snyk, but it's really been focused on the existing Snyk products. What the launch of AppRisk Pro gives us is integrations with third-party tools such as secrets detection tools, as well as runtime tools as well. Right, if you notice for this particular container image asset, we have the Snyk set as a source since it's been scanned, but we also have Dynatrace, which is one of those runtime integrations. So this means that this container was actually detected as deployed and running within the connected Kubernetes cluster. Now, this is not just for container images that have been scanned by Snyk. Right? If we take a look at our complete set of container images that are detected, we're of course seeing what's been scanned by Snyk. We can see that with the Snyk container control set is running. But we can also see there's a whole bunch of container images that are only been detected by our runtime integration, since they're actually deployed in our cluster. Right? So effectively what we have here is our coverage gap of our containers. Right? It's our blind spots that we have scanning in our cluster. Right? So thinking back to the policies, we can then automate an alert of this and then make sure that we get these containers scanned and remediate any associated vulnerabilities thereafter. Awesome. So overall, this inventory view gives us an overarching view of what our key assets are. It allows us to prioritize based on business context. We can also pull in some runtime intelligence to help identify these coverage gaps. But what we're going to look at next is how we can then use some more of that runtime intelligence to actually prioritize the associated issues that we're seeing. So if we hop into the Insights tab here, really the whole purpose of the Insights dashboard is to help you find the issues that are going to be most concerning to you based on your role. Right? So whether that's looking at those business critical Class A assets, which we can of course filter on here to see just the issues coming in from those crown jewel repositories, or it might be using some of these risk factors to further dig in based on the deployment and runtime context. Right, so actually looking at these different risk factors, the first one that we can use to help pare down from that initial 25,000 issue count is the OS condition. Right, so we can actually look at what the vulnerability is and see if it exists on a container that actually has the applicable operating system to make it exploitable. Right, furthermore, we can then see if that container image is actually deployed in our cluster. We can even see is the deployed container public facing with a path to the open internet. And then most recently, through some of our runtime integrations, we can even see if the vulnerable package has actually been loaded at runtime. Effectively here, right, we can see which vulnerabilities are actually reachable at runtime within our cluster. Right, so maybe this is a place we want to start, right? Since those are going to be pretty likely to be exploitable, we can then apply that particular risk factor. And then now we just see the set of issues that are actually loaded at runtime. I can then click on the evidence graph, which is going to give us a good view of what's actually happening here. Right, so what we have is this critical severity arbitrary code execution vulnerability, which is introduced through this package, which is then a dependency of this container image, which is ultimately deployed in our cluster, which was detected again by one of our third-party integrations. This case, it happens to be Dynatrace. Right, so understanding that the vulnerable package here is actually loaded and we know it to be deployed out in our cluster, it's definitely something that we know we want to fix. So what we can then do is then take that and then dig back into the Snyk scans that we may be used to get that very actionable fix advice. Right, in this case, we're on the vulnerable version. All we need to do is upgrade to this fixed version, rebuild that image, and we're going to be completely done with this particular vulnerability once we get that deployed. Awesome. So, so far we've looked at how we can get visibility into our software-based assets, the coverage gaps that exist. Here within Insights, we can, we showed how we can use some of that runtime intelligence to actually better prioritize the underlying issues. But now let's zoom out and take a look at how we can track some more overall progress with our AppSec, in terms of our AppSec program, with this analytics section as well. Right, so within application analytics here, there's a variety of asset-based views and metrics that help you understand both current state of your AppSec posture, but also progress over time. And then ultimately with AppRisk as a whole, we're extending beyond the existing Snyk tools to really give a more holistic picture of your AppSec program to allow you to make more informed risk-based decisions around your issues. Awesome. So that wraps up the demo. It leaves us about 7 or 8 minutes here to go through some questions. So I see that there have been some questions popping in from the Q&A. So I'll just take a look and see what we have. Looks like Vandana's been answering them in chat, so that's great. Greg has a question. What if the package is from an upstream package dependency? Will it tell you what is installing that package? So I think sorry, go for it, Vandana.
No, go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, so in that case, right, it sounds like you're talking about those dependencies of dependencies. So not just the direct dependencies, but the transitive dependencies or indirect dependencies. So Snyk definitely identifies those, right? When we're doing our dependency scans, we're building out the entire dependency tree exhaustively to each leaf node. So we're not missing anything, whether it's at that first level of direct dependencies, one layer down, or potentially many layers down. We'll identify everything and then give you very actionable fix advice on what top level version you need to upgrade to in order to remediate. Looks like that's it. If there's any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and we can take a look.
So while we wait on any last second questions to come in, I do just want to point everyone in the direction of a message I put in the chat. That is a link to our survey. If you wouldn't mind clicking that, filling it out for us, we would love to hear your feedback about our session today. If you have any thoughts about what you'd like to see on future programs, we would love to hear it there in that survey. And that will also make you eligible for our $50 Amazon gift card giveaway. So thank you so much for filling that out for us. Dylan, it looks like we might have gotten a question in.
Awesome. So Lynn's asking, what are the key components or functionalities typically found in ASPM solutions, and how do they contribute to improving application security?
All right. Now, when we talk about application security posture management, it might include vulnerability scanning and assessments. It will help you in getting the risk posture. So it will integrate with risk management tools. Then we can have the security policies and standard compliances which are there. And at the same time, we can actually integrate security from the DevOps processes. So if you have multiple tools as part of your CI/CD pipeline, we can integrate that as well. And it just does not stop there. We talk about threat intelligence, we talk about security observability and reporting, and we also cover incident response and automation as well when we talk about ASPM. So ASPM is like complete picture of what you have as part of your application security. So there are multiple components to it. There's no one or two components that we can define. So multiple aspects in one broad picture. I hope this answers your question, Lynn.
All right. Well, as we are in kind of our final moments here with today's webinar, I do just want to ask if each of you have any parting words or final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience before we officially close things out. Vandana?
I would just say, if you still have any questions after this webinar, or if you see the recorded ones, please do feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions or discuss about application security posture management.
All right, Dylan, anything before we close things out?
Just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of busy days to join. And again, if anyone wants to discuss further, feel free to reach out to us either on LinkedIn or send us an email afterwards. Always excited to talk about application security and more recently ASPM.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing from you over the last hour.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us.
So before I release our audience, a couple of final notes. Today's session was recorded and will be emailed to you shortly. You can also find it living on the Security Boulevard website. That's securityboulevard.com/webinars. I'd like to thank Snyk for sponsoring this program today, and to everyone here with us, thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you spending time with us, and we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks again, Dylan and Vandana.
Thank you.